listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
All right, welcome back to my show, Straight to Video. As always, it's so great to have you listening, and today's show was a treat as I got the chance to speak to filmmaker Lisa Downs, director, producer, and editor who, along with their partner Ashley Pugh, created the amazing Life After movie series, which has seen the release of the fantastic documentary Life After Flash, all about actor Sam Jones's journey in the industry since his role in the lead of the classic 1980 film Flash Gordon. And they would more recently follow that up with what is one of the most incredible movie stories you will hear in Life After the Navigator. One of our generation's most loved films, 1986's Flight of the Navigator, rests in the hearts of millions of people, but many don't know the roller coaster journey its young star Joey Kramer went on after the film hit our screen. So I urge you to all go check out lifeaftermovies.com. Watch the trailers for these two amazing documentaries and then pick up a copy if you can, because if you're a fan of this podcast and things we chat about, I'm sure you'll love these films. In my talk with Lisa, we chat all about what went into the making of those two documentaries, along with their own journey living in Australia, some of their music influences, along with some fun Corey Haim chat, which I wasn't expecting but always welcomed on this show. It's a fun one, so I hope you enjoy it. This episode of the show is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I've been using for the past couple of years. It's regularly used to create the podcast's episode art where you see each week, and it is an amazing and extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market. Now is a great time to get on board with Affinity Photo and also Affinity Designer and Publisher, as they've just announced a brand new version 2 platform with some great price discounts, so please check them out at affinity.serif.com. Okay, remember to visit lifeaftermovies.com once you've listened to my chat, and also Lisa's cool Life After Movies web show on YouTube where she interviews guests from her films along with other 80s pop culture legends. But right now, please enjoy my straight to video chat with filmmaker Lisa Downs. You have your Life After the Movies web show. We've had a bunch of similar guests on our shows. You've spoken to the likes of Keith Coogan, John Parr, and Alex Arkis.
Who was your favourite to talk to?
Out of those?
Yeah, I guess out of our common ones.
All very, very, very different ones. Keith Coogan was like shot out of a cannon. Couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
John Parr was cool because, I mean, he just lives just up the road from me in Doncaster, like 45 minutes away. So, and I think he's got some like Nottingham connection. So that was really nice and friendly.
Yeah, I loved talking to all three. I really, really enjoyed talking to them. But what I really loved was John Parr, bless him, and his manager went out of their way to record a 4K from their studio and sent me the thumb drive of the USB of the 4K footage so I could have a good I was like, that's really sweet. And you didn't have to do that.
Yeah. And he's so humble. I mean, that guy.
So humble. And he wrote I was amazed that he wrote the Gillette commercial. I was like, what? That should be your greatest achievement.
It's unreal what some of these people have done. But yeah, John Parr was great. And yeah, just the journey he's been on and the things he's done and seen. But yeah, just this bloke from Doncaster.
Oh, he was so nice. Yeah, 3 great choices. And so when I saw your list of people that you'd interviewed, I thought, yeah.
Do you enjoy doing those interviews?
I do. I really do. And I would love to do more. It started off as a weekly thing just in lockdown while I was waiting to kind of get back out on filming. And I just need to reach out to people more because obviously it's easy when you start if you have like a handful of people that you can call on. So that's why the early stages of mine is like Flash Gordon star, Flight of the Navigator star, Never Ending Story star. And then when I started to branch out to people that I couldn't just instantly connect with, it became like every 2 weeks and then every 3 weeks. And now we're back filming again. I do have to put the effort in, but I do really enjoy it, especially when you kind of talk to people that you never expect you would. And I guess my example of that probably, I was so nervous, was Joey Jeremiah from Degrassi.
Right.
Because he's someone that I hadn't had a relationship with beforehand. Like I hadn't filmed him before. I'd never met him before. And he was just so sweet when I'd emailed. And he was like, oh, I don't really do interviews, but I really like the look of your documentaries and I'd be happy to chat. And it was just so weird. They grew up on Degrassi. So I love that aspect of it.
Obviously having Alex Arkis on your show, that was kind of like a bit of a left field one for your kind of YouTube channel in a way. So has music been super important to you in your journey as well?
I mean, I always loved Everclear, and he was one of my 3 bucket list bands, people to see performing. And then I was really lucky to work. I produced this 6-part series for Sky a couple of years ago called Icon, where it was about iconic photographers and music photographers and the relationship that musicians have with artists and the photographers and the whole creative field of that. And then I knew that my friend kind of knew him. So I was like, well, maybe he wants to do an interview for Icon. And he did. So luckily we coordinated an interview while he was in London for the show that I already had tickets for that night when he was doing his Sun Songs tour. And then so off the back of that, reached out to his manager and I was like, oh, hey, does he want to do the web show? And he did. Oh, he's so nice. But I think music and film go hand in hand anyway. You know, you grow up with the soundtracks, and a lot of songs that I love, it's because I can instantly remember what scene they were from in a film. And I think music makes films. And, you know, some of the greatest soundtracks that I still have my CDs for are like the Stand By Me soundtrack and Mermaids and Dream a Little Dream and American Graffiti and Neverending Story.
The Dream a Little Dream soundtrack is considerably better than the Dream a Little Dream film.
Don't know. I would put that film in my top 3.
Really?
I would, just for what it meant to me as a teenager. That CD was the first CD I ever bought. I've seen that film so many times. I used to just write the script out when I was bored at school because I loved it so much, and I still love it. Is it going to be like an Oscar-winning film? No. But I think that's what's nice about films. It's like not the technicalities or necessarily the script or the actual film, but what it meant to you as a kid.
Exactly.
So yeah, top 3.
I want to talk about the work you do with Life After Movies series, but also give people a little introduction to you, if that's cool, and your journey in association with a lot of films that are close to our hearts and how you came across them. But you were born in the UK, but was it like 10 years old you moved to Australia?
It was. There was a bit of back and forth in between. Not to bore you with the details, but I was born in Chester. I love Chester. I'd love to go back when I can. I haven't been for years, but I need to. And then when I was 6 months, we went to Hong Kong for a couple of years and Australia for a couple of years, then England, and finishing primary school again in Chester. So I love it. And then when I was 10, we went to Australia for the second time for the more final time. So it was all from my dad's work. He was an electrical engineer and so moved around a lot. I had a tape somewhere where I used to do my radio shows with my proper Northern Cheshire accent, but I lost it moving to Australia. So I don't have it anymore. I'm a bit sad.
Was that a big shift for you back then? Like, I'm leaving my friends, or had that previous backwards and forth kind of prepared you for it?
Yes and no. It was exciting as a kid. But what was weird is the English school year is 6 months different to Australia. Australia starts in January instead of September. So when I got there, it was like, well, do you want to essentially skip a year or repeat a year? And I didn't feel like I was in a position, I mean, being 10, what do you know anyway? But you're young enough to not really fall behind. So I ended up skipping a year, but that meant that when I went back to primary school, I did the last 6 months from when we moved in the class with all my sister's old friends from before we moved. Then all my old friends were in the year below me. So it was this really strange time that I didn't enjoy, because that was kind of the first reality of moving back and not being with my old friends. But then in high school, it kind of just evened out and you start afresh. But I do miss the idea of being able to say, oh, I've, grown up with this person since I was 3 in primary school. And I do have some friends like that, but it's not quite the same as if I'd done primary school and high school with the same people. But maybe it's a good thing, see more of the world and meet new people. And, there's more diversity where I was in Sydney, and then I went to university in the country. So that was a whole other experience. Australia is an amazing place to grow up. So I definitely don't regret having to have moved there.
Was you always a big film fan as a child? Do you remember some of the earliest films you really obsessed over?
Oh, I do. I was so convinced I would win an Oscar by the time I was about 8 years old. Every time the magazines came out from the award seasons, I'd get my mum to buy them so I could see all the dresses and what people won the award for. And I'd always watch the ceremony and I was always really excited. I used to originally want to act. I didn't really know what that meant and it wasn't very good. But that was all I knew about being in the movies. I didn't know that there was a team behind making the film. I was like, I can just see the people, so that's what I want to do. So I used to practice like awards speeches in the toilet when I was like 6 or 7.
Why can't we keep hold of that mindset? It'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
I had my Oscar dress designed too. It was the Cinderella dress from Disney with the pearl drop earrings that the Little Mermaid had.
You had it down.
I had it down. I had it all down. So I knew it was always like something that I wanted to be involved in. And I was born 82. So all the films that I really loved were really from when I found them on VHS or that they were on TV, so I don't have that memory of, like, you hear people about Star Wars and Flash Gordon going, oh, I remember going to the cinema with my dad and it was amazing. Yeah. It was the first film I saw. And I don't really have a memory. I think Jurassic Park might have been my first film, but I don't remember it being a big experience.
No, I'm the same with Star Wars. Star Wars was everything for me as a kid, but I never remember going to the cinema to see it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I even did go to the cinema to see it.
Exactly. Like, I remember so clearly, like, the ad for the Goonies from television. And I remember because we recorded it off TV onto VHS. When I watch the Goonies now, I remember some of the ads that happened at certain points. Like, there was a drama called Wish Me Luck. Must have been in England because the accent. And that came on during the TV. So every time I think of the Goonies, I'm like, tune in for drama of Wish Me Luck. And then it goes to static and it comes back to the Goonies again. And so it's a really funny kind of way to remember films. But I'm definitely the VHS generation.
What are your memories of the video store back in Australia? Was it like a chain store or a small, like, independent one?
We had Blockbuster. We also had a local video store as well. But I feel like Blockbuster should come back. And I feel like it might come back with this whole retro thing. But we used to every Saturday night go and get the Chinese or get a pizza and go to Blockbuster. And I would always get, on top of whatever we were picking for the movie, get 3 films. I would get one that I really wanted to see, one that I'd never heard of just to give it a go, and then one that I wanted to watch again. And so that was my kind of thing. Every week I'd get these 3 mystery box of films on top of our family dinner. And I mean, everyone who knows the video experience will know without me having to really explain why it was so great. And it's a really hard thing to describe to someone who hasn't had that experience. It doesn't sound exciting, but it was the most exciting thing ever.
What was the repeat one you always used to get? Did you have a few?
I remember when the Dark Crystal, our VHS, snapped, which was heartbreaking as a kid. So I would go and have to get that from the video store until we got a new one. And Corey Haim films would be my thing. I had a list of all his films and I was like I was a big Corey Haim fan, trying to just tick them all off. So not only would I go to the video store to go and rent and re-rent his films, I would scour every Sunday when the TV guide came out. And his films were always on between like 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So I would go through that time block and highlight all of his films so I could record them and then have them. So that would be my biggest repeat, I think.
Throw some obscure Corey Haim films at me, see if I've seen them. I've seen a lot.
Oh my God. I mean, Life 101 with our buddy Keith, that he was in that one. I love, obviously, Dream a Little Dream. Lucas, I really like. I haven't seen Silver Bullet in years, but I should rewatch it.
That's great. Gary Busey is great in that
Yeah, film. I need to rewatch that one. I mean, License to Drive, which was obviously a very popular film anyway. I tell you which one I really love, Just One of the Girls, where it's Nicole Eggert and he has to be a girl to go to this music program.
They'd never make that film nowadays.
No, but Alanis Morissette's at the end of that. You know, when he does the showcase at the end?
Yeah.
Alanis Morissette is the keyboard singer.
Unreal.
Yeah.
I need to revisit it. I've not seen it for a few years.
Yeah, you have to rewatch that. And then there was another one, I'm sure, with Nicole Eggert, beginning with B, that I can't think off the top of my head.
There's Blown Away, which is a bit saucy.
Blown Away, that's the one. I was like, oh, come on now. Don't be doing that.
He's cheated on me.
I know. And there was one actually called Me, Myself and I that I've never managed to find it or see it. So that's kind of the one that got away.
I guess being in Australia, you would have seen a lot like TV shows over there, which we perhaps wouldn't have got over here. Was you a fan of anything in particular? Was it Degrassi? Or was there anything in particular when you returned to the UK, when speaking to friends they had no clue about?
I'm always surprised the number of people who have heard of it in England, because I don't think you got it, was Round the Twist.
Right, yeah.
So you have?
We did get it, yeah. I think people love the theme tune to that.
Oh, yeah. It's a really good theme song. But outside of Neighbours and Home and Away, I think really the big shows were Round the Twist, Heartbreak High, when you're starting to get to the older crowd. But really we had a lot of Canadian shows. So we had like A You Afraid of the Dark and obviously Degrassi and all of those series. And it was surprisingly Canadian American TV listings that I grew up with, you know, and then obviously the cartoons are going to be Darkwing Duck and DuckTales and Tailspin and all the ones that 80s kids grew up with. We had a lot of that for the Saturday mornings, Inspector Gadget and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But But I think, yeah, Round the Twist would have to be the biggest Australian one.
Going back to music again, did you see many live shows in Australia? Any big bands which you fell in love with over there?
I did. My very, very first concert was Michael Jackson during the History Tour, which was amazing. I do love Michael Jackson. We never got as many bands as I think that I would have liked, or I think it felt like as a teenager that America and Europe and Asia got more, but I could be wrong. It could just be that perception when you're younger. But my first concert I went to without my parents was Matchbox 20.
Nice.
Which was really good.
That first album is superb.
Really good. I mean, I think I was very lucky that I always tried to go and see live music where I could. Like, I remember seeing Metallica. Pink would come out a lot. I'm a huge Hanson fan. So the first time that I saw them was on this TV show called House of Hits in 2000, where I went to the audience. And then they came out a few times after that. So that was really fun. And because I grew up on my dad's music, like I grew up loving Beach Boys, Brady Bunch is still one of my favorite TV shows. And I love Neil Sedaka. So whenever anyone like Barry Williams from the Brady Bunch came out to play a show at a really small RSL, we call them in Australia, but I guess a community centre, like a Lions Club kind of thing. I was front row for that. I was 19 and I asked him at the end when I was getting my pictures signed if he would come around for lunch. I was like, oh, he's going to brush me off. But he said, give me your cell and let me see. And then he called me the next day to tell me that he couldn't make it. But I thought that was very sweet that he called. And it was a great concert. Australia was really good for those kind of big arena spectaculars. So things like the Happy Days musical and the Buddy Holly musical and all of those kind of 50s, 60s, 70s ones I really loved going to see. In Greece, that kind of thing. I mean, the biggest Australian bands when I was growing up as a teenager were Silverchair, Ben Lee, like Frenzal Rom, Killing Heidi, that kind of era. But we always had John Farnham. Little Johnny Farnham was always an icon, and Jimmy Barnes.
So you come back to the UK. What was your initial starting point for the Life After movies prior to making Life After Flash? Or was that itself the starting point? From there, you realised there was this really interesting theme and concept for a different kind of movie documentary.
That was definitely the starting point. I had wanted to do something, a feature documentary for a while. I always liked documentaries. I had done one at university where I went to India for 10 days and it was this Tibetan children's village and I just loved the whole process of it. And then I kind of just got into working in television, which was good experience, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And so when I moved to England, it feels like there's more of an opportunity to do your own projects in England as opposed to Australia. There's more companies, there's more people, there's more the sense of being able to do something on your own as opposed to pigeonholing you. So I had just been dabbling in different projects and I'd been working in adventure travel for a few years and I just really wanted to do my own project, my own idea. And I always loved the idea of doing a feature documentary. I had done a scripted feature with some friends at work, which was really great. And I would love to do another one. It was a really good experience. We didn't know what we were doing, but I think it turned out okay. And then a couple of years later, one of the girls from that office was at a party with her and she had just worked on The Jump with Sam, which is, as you know, I don't think they do it anymore. That ski jump, like celebrities do ski jumps.
We had this kind of era at one point where there's all those like really weird reality shows, and I think that was
like celebrities work at Sainsbury's and celebrities paint houses. He never actually ended up on TV. He hurt his shoulder trying to do an Olympic ski jump with no experience. And so at this party, she was like, oh, I've just been working with Sam. And I had just missed him and Melody at a Comic-Con a couple of months ago. And I was really disappointed because I grew up with Flash Gordon. I don't remember when I first saw it. It was a VHS film. It was on TV.
But it was always there.
It was just always there. It was like I was born with it. And I just got really excited and we started talking about, I wonder what he has done. You know, he's done TED. What happened in between. There's a lot of years that I don't know about. And we just said, oh, it'd be really interesting documentary. And I was like, oh, we should call it Life After Flash. And, you know, a couple of wines, you think it's a really great idea. And then, so she said, we'll write a proposal and then I'll send it to his agent who he had at the time. And so I did. And then I was suddenly on a Skype with Sam where he really loved the idea as well. And that was October 2014. And then in January of 2015, I was out in Texas talking about crowdfunding and filming and meeting him and Melody, and it was just such a surreal experience, you know, sitting having dinner with the two of them. And he is how he is in the documentary is how he is in real life. Like you'll have dinner and he'll be the one with the back to the wall so he can see all the exits and entrances and know like the way to get you out safely if something happens, and he'll know everyone by name and he'll be stopping to chat to everyone, and he's just such an amazing person. So that's kind of how it all started. I didn't set out like one day and go, I really want to do a documentary about Flash Gordon. How am I going to do it? But what I did know is that there were a few documentaries out at the time. It felt like a wave of nostalgia documentaries, like Back in Time. And there was a Ghostbusters one in the works. And I didn't want to just be another making of film. So adding that biographical narrative into it was kind of our USP to make it a bit different to other films. And then that's kind of how it started. And then you start thinking about other films you could do, and then you get excited. And then, Navigator, we started filming halfway through Flash because we just needed to try and utilize these times being out in America because it's expensive to be traveling and filming when you're in the UK. And that's kind of, where it all began.
Was this your first time kind of reaching out to different people, tracking them down and pitching a project to them?
Yeah, because my experiences before that, especially in TV, were you kind of work with, especially what I was doing, like you're working with tourism boards who then give you contacts, and, you have to source some people, but mainly it is just kind of working with what you know. So it was definitely a learning experience to reach out to people. I mean, I was very lucky that Sam obviously could connect me with some people.
Once you've got that initial person on board, it saves a lot of closed doors and unanswered emails, I guess.
Well, exactly. And also you can't do a film about Flash Gordon without having Sam on board. I know that, and I think they actually just got him, which I was so happy for them for, but there's a RoboCop documentary that's been in the works for years.
Never had Peter Weller yet. I've had Gary on this show as well, Gary Smart from Dead Mouse.
Oh, and so as soon as I was following them, because there's a Beetlejuice one, and so I always follow these other documentaries, and I was just thinking, oh, you poor things, like I know how they feel being in that position, but I know how easy it is to kind of get carried away with stuff and excited to want to start doing it without Peter Weller involved. But I'm happy that they got them. I just think when you're starting a project, you have to really just be like, who is the person that this can't happen without? And then if you go to them first, make sure you've got them on board. And then hopefully everything starts to fall into place.
Going into it, I guess you have to be open about things taking sudden turns in the story, such as your life after the Navigator film. You said because of Joey's situation when talking about Joey Kramer, who played David Freeman in Flight of the Navigator, when you made that initial contact, you had no clue originally how his particular story would end. So do you have to be open to things? It's not like a film script. You've got to start, middle and end. How do you go into it from that angle?
I mean, I guess that's the positive and the negative of documentary. So with Sam's story, I didn't know what his story was. Even at the beginning, I had some of my friends grilling me, going, well, what's the drama? Where's it? Like, what is the story of the film? What are the 3 acts? I was like, I don't know. And, and it's such a personal thing when you're talking about someone's life. And I needed to kind of do a few interviews with Sam first for him to get to know us as well. So I started very top level, like how did you get the role and what was it like working with Brian, and just things to kind of get him warmed up. And then it was actually through his friends, because I was very lucky with both Sam and Joey, where Sam had said to his friends, look, as long as you're telling the truth, it doesn't matter what you say, I won't mind, you just have to be honest. And so then they started telling all their stories about Sam's brother and Sam's dad and his breakdown. And so then I went back to Sam, probably like the 5th interview, and I had said, look, these are all the things that your friends are talking about. Totally get if you don't want to talk about them, but it feels like for people to see where you've come and what you've been through, it would be really great to see that even things can happen to Flash Gordon, and this is where you went. So he spoke it over with his wife, and then the next day we did the interview where he told everything. But again, you don't know, like I didn't know any of that until really he sat down with the interview, and then you just kind of make it work. I have a lot of cue cards and try and see then what order you can put things in based on what you know, as opposed to trying to fit answers into what your preconceived plan is going to be. And same with Joey. I mean, I kind of knew some of his story because you can Wikipedia it, but still, like, the big gap of why he robbed a bank isn't on the internet. And he actually got into so much more trouble that I realized you can't Google a lot of what he's done. So then I had a pinboard of his life story going, okay, he was born here and he did this here, there was arrest here, and then he went to rehab here and then another rehab here. And so I had this whole kind of chart of his story and pulled out which bits I thought were the biggest turning point points that we needed to tell within the doc. But even then, we would come back, Ash and I, who's my other half and who also produces the films, we were like, we don't even know if he is going to relapse. Is he going to come through? Are we going to have to plan to go out to jail again? Like, we didn't know how his story was going to turn out because, addiction is really hard. And when you know that someone said, this is going to be it, this is it, I'm not going to do it again. And then it happens again for whatever reason they can't control. You have to take it with a pinch of salt, but he's doing really well now, which is good. Yeah, it's really tricky because you get to become friends with these people and you know them and you want the best for them. So it's a really kind of interesting situation to be in. But we were very, very lucky with both.
It must be so exciting when you see things taking a turn within the documentary or opportunities coming on board, such as in Life After the Navigator. You get that lovely reunion at the end of the film and all that kind of thing. That must be one of the most rewarding things. Like, I wasn't expecting this, but it's great where this is suddenly going. Let's just roll with it. Are you good at suddenly jumping on board that train and just like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's go with it.
You kind of have to, because if you don't, then the opportunity will go. The reunion was such an amazing day, and my 80s child inner self was just screaming with excitement and trying to stay composed on the outside. But that was really, Randall was so good to be involved with that film, and he came on board as EP and he organized the studio and he emailed everyone and said, hey, come on down. And, because I'd been trying to find a contact for Cliff DeYoung for like 2 years with no success, and Randall just emails him and there he is. So, I was really, really lucky that we managed to just do so many interviews on one day and have that moment where Joey sees him for the first time. And, because you forget that when you see people on film, you forget that they're real people who are all still friends in this case. And it was such a family and they had such a great time filming it. And there was no stories of Hollywood or just negative things happening on set. It genuinely was this amazing experience for everyone. And then so to have Joey be there and realize that people still care about him was a really big thing. And what was also really nice with the film was he had been using the feeling of looking forward to filming with us and having this out and telling his story as the motivation to stay clean and sober. And so when you hear things like that, it's just such a really special thing. It just gave him a purpose, made him realize that he had fans because he didn't think anyone even remembered the film for so long. And now he's doing Comic-Con, so he even sees it more. And we're doing screenings finally. We were supposed to during lockdown, but we couldn't. But we're doing screenings of the film so he can see people's reaction to it. And it's just been this really special thing that he has said that, the documentary has been a really good way for him to keep on the path that he wants to stay on.
It's amazing. I say it seems to have took on a life of its own since its release. I mean, how long's it been out now? It's been out a while.
2 years this month. Yeah, it's such a bittersweet release for us because we were so excited to get it out and we've had such a good reaction from people. But we were going to do film festivals and screenings and, we ended up having this virtual premiere with the cast and the crew. And I know it's really important for Joey to see it with real people and audiences. So really happy that it was out, but excited to be doing screenings now. But I'm really just amazed. Like I get emails from people who have watched it just wanting to give messages to Joey, and it's just been a really, really nice response with it.
It must be so great for him just to come to another country as well and see the response to the film.
Well, what was really funny was the first time he was traveling to a Comic-Con in Texas, and I don't want to be rude or I don't know how to broach it, but I just kind of said to him, are you allowed to travel? And I didn't realize he had a US passport. So he did a test trip down to Seattle just to test he could cross the border. I mean, I don't know what restrictions he has.
Exactly.
And he messaged, he was like, it's all fine. I made it. I had lunch and I came back. And then so obviously he's fine to travel. But I was like, am I just organizing all these things for you and you're going to get stopped at the border? But he's good.
Excellent stuff. And what's next for you? I know you have the Life After Atreyu, which is based on the never-ending story and Noah Hathaway's journey.
Yeah.
How is that project being compared to the previous two films?
Oh, the pandemic didn't help. I'll be honest. I get that people had it much worse, but we had some really good shoots planned for 2020. And then we started filming with Noah in March. And the trip that we had planned for April, obviously had to be postponed. And that was including an interview with Wolfgang. Then he, was sick by the time we could go back to the States. And when we went last November, he wasn't able to do it and obviously sadly passed. So I would love to have met him. I'm very close to having all the interviews in the bag. So I've already started editing. So very excited to have that one come out. And I want to try and do some festivals with it as well, which would be good. But very, very lucky with some of the people that said yes. And again, you know, what an experience. Like, it's taken us to obviously America, but Italy and Germany. And yeah, it's going to be good. I'm really excited about it. There's a lot of ups and downs with the edit stage, but hopefully early next year. But I don't have a date yet.
Is Joey involved in this one? Because he reveals in Life After the Navigator that it was actually a never-ending story as well.
He's going to pop up in it.
Yeah?
He's going to... He's going to pop up in it. Just because it's such a great story, and I didn't even realize until we were walking around Gastown, I was like, this looks really familiar. And he was like, oh, it's a funny story about that alleyway. And so that was quite fun. But yeah, he'll pop up in it.
Kind of in closing, Lisa, one thing you've spoken about in the past is your feelings about nostalgia. My whole podcast is based around nostalgia and things I grew up on and things like that. And you've said people of our age, you're younger than me, but we certainly have the same love of similar films, and that we're the first generation to really celebrate nostalgia, but possibly also the last. I think that's a really interesting take, which I'd not really thought about, but I understand what you mean.
Oh, that's nice. I forgot I'd said that.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's a really interesting take on things. I mean, both in that the 80s and 90s seem to have this longevity at the moment. They say everything has like a 30 years later things come back, but the 80s seem to be hanging on, where I think we're into 40 years later now, and the 90s are getting more popular. But other periods perhaps didn't have that with pop culture.
I think they did to some degree. Like, obviously you had filmmakers like Randall and George Lucas honoring their 50s childhood how they could in the 70s. But I just don't think, you know, it was really expensive to have a camera. There were no phones with cameras. It was a really hard way to celebrate when you didn't have a platform to realize that other people might want to celebrate it too. You know, you might have to go down to your local community center and join the fan club and go to their meetings or whatever it might be. But here, like now, all the people who were old enough from the 80s to celebrate the 80s, we've got social media and we can make films about it without needing a lot of money. And there are so many channels to stream that it's not like there were only 4 channels growing up and it had to fit into one of those. And I think we just have so many more opportunities to connect with like-minded people. But I do also think the 80s were a really special period anyway. I get that I grew up in it, so I could be biased, but you know, it was the first time really kids were marketed to on television. So this whole 360 of, you not only had the TV shows and the movies, but then you had all this merchandise. It was like it was geared for us. And then all the films were geared towards children because the protagonists were kids. You know, it wasn't like Star Wars anymore. It was like Goonies and Lost Boys and Labyrinth and all these people that were teens you could watch, which I feel like was a really special time. And I think that'll continue into the 90s because people our age, when you're a teenager in the 90s, you still want to do that nostalgia trip. But I just feel like when you get to the next generation, I don't know if they would have that. I get that they'll have their own memories and experiences, but it doesn't seem as magical.
Especially now, because people, like with Stranger Things and stuff like that, is targeted at the 80s and kids are enjoying things from the 80s, but it's not theirs. Well, it's theirs, but not theirs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so in 20 years, their nostalgia will be remembering an 80s themed TV show.
Yeah, it's strange.
I feel like there's too many ways to see stuff now. Like, people watch stuff on their phones, people just watch TikTok, people just watch YouTube. It's a different kind of world. People don't go to the cinema as much. Like, I miss the days when you would go to the cinema and be sold out and you'd be so excited to see it, and you had to see it because all your friends had seen it, and you know, then you go buy the magazine. Like, I had all the magazines, like 16 and Bop and Teen Beat, and, you know, and that was how you found out about stuff. And I don't know, and this could be like the old person in me going, these kids these days, but I don't know what they would celebrate that's theirs now that's special, apart from scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. They don't have video stores and they don't have the Saturday morning cartoons and toys and cereal boxes and just all these kind of really innocent, simple experiences that don't involve social media.
And everything's so not over documented now, but everything is just so well documented now. I mean, I've got friends who have got kids now, and on their Facebook, I think it's amazing, and I kind of wish that I had it now, but that's perhaps why I have got such a love for 80s and stuff. But my friends on their Facebook, they've got like pretty much every month is documented from when their kids were born. Imagine having that if you was born in the 70s or 80s or
Yeah.
90s even, that everything is documented so well. But I think on the flip side of that, my nostalgic heart warms to things when you suddenly find a photo which you'd not seen and everything just suddenly comes flooding back.
Yeah. What was really nice was when we did go to New York recently for Ash's daughter's 21st, her and her boyfriend took a disposable camera, like a film camera, because they said they want the experience of waiting to get the photos developed and go and pick them up. I was like, yes, good. So I got my Polaroid camera out for the dinner and we took Polaroids, and, you know, it was just a really nice thing. And you go into stores now and there's vinyl everywhere, which is brilliant. Cassettes are coming back, you know, so maybe there is some hope. But again, like, you know, I feel like we're such a lucky generation because it does feel like we're the kind of first and last to really celebrate what was ours and be able to celebrate it too.
And one last question, which I've just thought of. Any chance of a Corey Haim documentary in the future? Because that needs to be made.
Oh, well, look, I mean, I would love to. I mean, I saw Corey Feldman's Truth documentary. You know, I know that there's been things on him. I feel like I would love to do it if he was still around. I don't feel like it's my place to do one that he's not here anymore. I don't feel like I could do it well.
I think his sister's quite a good custodian of his memory from a positive point of view.
Yeah, I'd heard, like, you know, stories between Corey Feldman and his mum, and, you know, and I don't tend to believe one side or another because I'm not involved and I don't know the true story. But I mean, I would love to do something that, I guess, you know, hypothetically, if Life After Lost Boys, you know, to do a tribute to him. So to do a film that he was in would be amazing. To do something just on him, I don't feel like I could do it justice.
He is somebody who needs more of a light shining on what could have been and how great he was.
Yeah, I agree. He was really underrated. And what I really love, kind of on the same line as underrated actors, I interviewed Jason James Richter for Life After Trey because obviously he was in the third one, and he spoke about Jonathan Brandis obviously being in the second one, The Neverending Story. And so I'm happy that I have now a way to put him into the Life After Trey, even though it's only about the first one.
Yeah.
I think he's another underrated actor who also, the anniversary of his death was only last week. And like Kid 90 film was great. That's one I wish I had had access to the footage and made. So yeah, I think there's definitely some underrated actors that are no longer with us that would be nice to do something with and for.
Well, I certainly appreciate you shining light on these films, which I love.
Yay. Everybody watch Dream a Little Dream.
Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's great. I'm excited for Life After Atreyu when that drops, and hopefully cross paths with you at Comic-Con at some point.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be nice. Now we can see each other IRL as opposed to just locked in our houses.
Great to connect with Lisa Downs, as I've been a big fan of the Life After Movies series for a few years, and I'm really excited to see what projects they release next. To keep up to date, visit lifeaftermovies.com, sign up to their mailing list, and if you like their Life After Flash documentary and you're a big fan of the 1980 Flash Gordon movie, then there's a bonus podcast on the Straight to Video Patreon page with myself and Bradley Mabbott chatting all about it. So if you want to hear that, then please head on over to patreon.com/STVpod. Our Straight to Video 80s video shop over in Alfreton, Derbyshire is having an office Christmas party on Saturday the 10th of December. If any of you are in the area and want to come along, it's all Die Hard themed, so we can get together and debate whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas film. We'll be having a fun night with a quiz and a bunch of surprises, so if you'd like to come along, grab a ticket from our website www.80svideoshop.co.uk, which is all new and updated, so please check that out. Alright, just a few more episodes until Christmas. Next week's show is a pretty special one, kind of 30 years in the making, I could say. So I look forward to sharing that one with you, but until we chat again, thanks for the amazing support and speak real soon.